In this video, I'm going to discuss my top tips for keeping snakes away from your backyard and how to keep your pets safe. I'm also going to point out all the stupid myths and old wives' tales that perpetuate around snake repellents so you don't waste your time and money or put yourselves at risk. After watching this video, make sure you head over to our video on snake bite emergencies where I'll explain what to do if your dog, cat or horse is bitten by a snake. I'll pop the link below. Alright then everyone, hi, I'm Dr Leigh, and if you haven't met me before, I run yourvetonline.com, and that's where you can receive vet advice about any of your animals 24/7. On this channel, I provide plenty of animal health information so that you can learn how to keep your pets and horses living their best and healthiest lives. Make sure you subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you know when we drop a new video. It also helps us to know whether what we're actually producing is actually of benefit to you. So for many of us, living with snakes is a fact of life, but that doesn't make it any easier. And I don't know about you, but being a Kiwi from New Zealand where we actually don't have any snakes, I'd rather not come face to face with them in my backyard or risking my pets getting close and perhaps getting a bite. But thankfully for us, snakes are actually quite shy animals and don't really want anything to do with us or our pets. Thank goodness. However, they are beneficial to our ecosystem because not only do they eat mice and rats and lizards and frogs and all those other pests, but they're also food for other wildlife such as birds of prey like hawks. So if you see snakes around your property, it's usually a good sign that you've got a really good, healthy local ecosystem. So although most species of snakes in North America and Australia are harmless, there are some pretty nasty venomous ones that can pose quite a risk to not only us but also our pets. So it is really worthwhile keeping them at bay. And we're never going to be able to keep them completely 100% away. That's impossible, but there's definitely a few do's and don'ts. I'm just thinking maybe I should cover the don'ts first because, oh my goodness, there are so many myths that I see bandied about. And yeah, okay, right, let's start. The number one myth that I see mentioned most often is probably the one that recommends using mothballs to repel snakes. I find this quite hilarious actually. There's not only no science to back this, mothballs are really kind of nasty, especially to children and our pets. So it's really a no-brainer, so please don't use them. They're usually made from either naphthalene or paradichlorobenzene, but it's the naphthalene that is the more toxic of the two. And not only does this cause a really intense headache, I know I'm extremely affected by it, but if consumed, it can cause hemolytic anemia, and basically that destroys your red blood cells. So there's less oxygen circulating around, making it really hard to breathe, and all your organs don't function properly because there's lack of oxygen. And ultimately, yeah, everyone just dies. So yeah, they're pretty nasty. Don't use them. And let's think of some of the other ones that I've read. So when I was doing a little bit of research for this video, I was actually kind of shocked. There really is a lot of crap advice out there. I saw heaps and heaps of articles recommending planting lemongrass, spraying the area with garlic oil or cinnamon and clove oil or cedar oil and even vinegar. And all I can say is good luck with that. And what's really interesting is that the actual recommendation is to spray these substances on the ground. How bizarre! I don't understand that recommendation. The sheer volume required to have any effect is huge. Plus, if it rains, well, it's just going to dilute and wash it away. When I looked into it a bit more, I actually saw some studies that have shown that cinnamon, clove or eugenol oil to work, you actually have to spray them on the snake not on the ground. And depending on your location, you'll likely require an actual permit from your Fish and Wildlife Service or whatever it's called in your area to actually be able to use those oils. So while they might be deemed to be natural snake repellents, giving you the feel-good warm fuzzies, they can actually be really harmful to other species. So yeah, I really cannot recommend them. So I guess you're wondering, what do I recommend to keep snakes away from our backyards? Well, the best thing to do is you've got to think about what snakes need to thrive in an environment. And the vast majority of snakes prefer to live where there's an abundant food supply, don't we all, and water sources. So food and water. And they like to have plenty of shelter, especially to protect them from overhead predators like the birds of prey that I mentioned earlier. So to put it succinctly, yeah, snakes enter areas that are inhabited by us when they are searching for food and water. So we really need to make sure our yards and our homes are not too appealing. So the first thing to do would be to keep your lawn really short and your garden weeded, and plenty of space underneath shrubs and trees, so there's nowhere for the snakes to hide. And then the big thing is to remove all sources of food. Now, keeping rats and mice at bay will go a really long way to limiting a snake's food source. So try and keep pet food and birdseed and animal tight sealed tins, preferably inside or in the shed. Feed pets inside and remove leftovers so that and sweep up any of their crumbs that they leave. Don't scatter bird seed all across your lawn. Like, it's beautiful to have birds on your lawn, but if you're doing that, you're just leaving seeds behind. The rats and mice come in, and of course that means there's a food source for your snakes. And I better just mention, if you do have a problem with rats and mice and you want to lay baits, be incredibly careful that you don't harm your pets. Check out our video on rat bait and what you need to do if your pet eats some. I'll pop the link below so you can watch that at your leisure. Now, if you're someone that's got chickens or an aviary, then these two can be really appealing, not only as a food source, yes, snakes have been known to eat chickens, but because the food that you feed them is a food source to the snake, rats and mice, which is then a food source to the snake. So yeah, if you've got chickens or an aviary, you've got to try and make it the least appealing as you can, because they really do attract rats and mice. So in these situations, I'd be fencing with special snake-proof fencing. Now make sure you go really, really deep and underground, and that will help stop them being able to get under the fence as well. So if you're a keen gardener, you may have a compost bin, and again, this can be a really good food source for rats and mice. So make sure you put a big cover over them so that they can't access it. Now remember, snakes love a source of water. Now this doesn't necessarily mean rivers, creeks and ponds. It could be a leaking pipe or a hose that creates puddles. So try to ensure that those areas around water tanks are not damp. You fix any leaky taps or leaky hose attachments. So yeah, natural water sources can be quite difficult to manage. So it's a good idea to keep man-made drains covered and make sure there are no leaky pipes. Remember, snakes are also attracted to areas that are cool and dark, that provide them with cover and shelter. So keeping your property free from debris and rubbish is really worthwhile. So that means removing things like scrap metal, wood piles, logs or trash, or just moving them well away from your house, or in an area where your dogs and children can't access that particular area, and be super careful around them. Also, make sure that you seal any entry points to your home where they can enter, especially like underneath in the basement area or the crawl space underneath the home. And don't forget, plenty of snakes, particularly pythons, like to climb, and they might use overhanging vegetation and tree branches to get onto your roof and then into your attic area, or whatever that's called, that spaces between your roof and your ceiling. So you can stop that by using that snake-proof grilling netting and screens, so across any gaps, around doors, around windows, anything like that, just to try and stop them from getting inside. Other things you can try and do include fencing your property with special snake-proof fencing. Now this can be quite expensive and it doesn't always work, but hey, if you've got lots of pets and children, you know, it might be a really good option. It's worthwhile remembering that the time of the year and where you live can actually dictate when you might see the most snakes. In areas that are typically really hot all year round, temperature might not be that important. Like I know here in Australia, in the northern regions, snakes hardly ever bask in the sun. It's just too hot. And they're way more active after the rain when there's plenty of water and prey about. However, when we get further south in the more temperate areas, there's much more activity early in the morning, at dusk, and in the evenings when, again, there's nocturnal animals, so there's lots of food, that's activity, you know, from the rats and mice, and it's cooler for them, so they prefer that time of the day. And let's not forget snake breeding season, because snakes can be actually quite a lot more aggressive and will actually attack more during their mating season. Now it's different for each species, but generally speaking, snakes breed during either late winter or spring. So it's worthwhile, if you know you've got a certain species of snake that's located in your area, find out when their breeding season is, just so that you can take extra precautions during that time. Make sure when you're out and about that you keep your dogs on a leash, educate your children to be snake smart, and always carry a first aid kit with a compression bandage or 2 or 3. Now, okay, let's talk a little bit about snake aversion training for dogs. And it's one of those most frequent questions I get asked about, and it's so full of controversy. Now, I'll share my opinion, and yeah, you can take from it what you will. But essentially, dog snake aversion training using electric shock collars is a confusing positive punishment, i.e. the dog receives an aversive stimulus, being pain, is so hit and miss, and it frequently does not work. Some dogs might even have the opposite reaction, become really fearful and aggressive. Instead, I prefer to actually concentrate on what I can control. So making sure your dog has really good, excellent recall and will stop and leave things when I ask them to. So these are pretty basic skills that I believe that all dogs should know. It means that no matter the situation, whether it's a busy road and finding, say, roadkill, or there's a package of food on the path, you can make them stop and leave it. Of course, this doesn't protect them if they're in a yard by themselves or out of view. So yeah, those are situations when you basically need to take your chances. But if you're regularly finding snakes on your property, then it would definitely be worthwhile having a snake catcher on speed dial. Now, your local animal control service will likely have details for these people. And when they attend, like if you call them up because you've got a snake you need moving, they'll catch and bag this snake, and then they'll move it to an area away from people and pets in an environment where they know they'll thrive. All right, so make sure you check out our video on the first aid treatment when your pet is struck by a snake. It could definitely save your pet's life. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit subscribe. It lets me know that what I'm producing is content that you find valuable. All right then guys, I'm Dr. Leigh from Your Vet Online. Take care.